Hey, thanks for listening to the AfterWord.
Here we are again. Here we are in your radio.
We're still going. Hey, this is a podcast of the Town Church in Fort Collins. We're doing this because we hope it's a helpful tool for our people in two different ways. One, we get to explore some more of the layers of the passage that was just preached the previous Sunday. There's always more layers there. And two, we want to intentionally see how do we see our affections for God grow from what is in that passage. What view of God do we get? How do we see more of God's glory in this passage? We want to be very intentional about that. So thanks for joining us. We hope it's helpful to that end. I am joined here by Josh McGeehan, elder and pastor of the Town Church.
Good morning, evening, or afternoon, whatever time you're listening.
And Richard Nelson, an elder at the Town Church.
Hi.
And then I'm Eric. I'm Eric
Reeves.
Reeves, yes, thank you. Sometimes I don't talk well. Do we do anything at the beginning, or do we just get right into it?
We do a question. Remember, a fun question,
Yeah.
and I think I know it this week. So why don't I kick us up? So this question is: we live in Colorado. Richard and I are Colorado natives, and Eric, you went skiing on Monday.
Yesterday for us.
Personal day.
Yeah. Yep.
So we thought we'd ask the question. Richard and I grew up skiing a little bit, growing up in the mountains of Colorado. What is your worst skiing injury, and how did it happen?
Or wrecked, not you don't necessarily were injured.
Well, it could be both and or either I, or.
So I would say just answer it however you want, Richard. Is there one that
You
comes
want me
up?
to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one that came right to my mind. And so I was going down a very bumpy trail, or a lot of moguls, as they call them, and trying to act like I knew what I was doing. And I got quite out of control. My skis flipped out from under me, and I hit in a cloud of dust. And it was right underneath the chairlift. And so, I made myself look like a fool.
Everybody's looking at you.
Yeah, but I got up and said, I'm okay.
So no injury.
No injuries, just to my pride.
Okay. Well,
That's a good thing.
And sometimes that's good.
Yeah.
Now, what about you, Josh? Because I learned something about you this morning that I doubt many people know. That you grew up skiing. You started in the 4th grade, took quite a few lessons, and in fact, you raced in skiing.
Yeah, I did. I did do a little bit of that. And it was part of our lessons, and then kind of moved on to that. And yeah, so growing up really close to Monarch Mountain, about 45 minutes away, and probably about an hour and 10 minutes from Copper, we went skiing every weekend. We'd go a lot. But probably my worst wreck, and it did end up in a little bit of an injury, although not major, was we had actually a school ski day, and the whole school went up. So because I skied a lot, I wanted to impress some of my friends, and so we'd been hitting this, they call it a cornice jump, so you kind of, it's on the side of kind of a ledge, or there's like maybe a 7 or 8 foot drop off, but you jump off the cornice and down into this little pit and then ski down the mountain. So we'd been doing this cornice jump all day and doing different jumps and different tricks. And of course, when you get a bunch of 17-year-old boys doing this, 16-year-old boys doing this, you're trying to outdo each other. So we were on the final run of the day, and I'm glad I did it then so I didn't ruin my whole day of skiing. But I'd been doing some different tricks that I knew, but I really wanted to try doing a back scratcher. So that's whenever you pull your skis up behind you and you try and touch the back of your skis to your back. And so the front of your skis are down towards the ground. And so you kind of puff out your chest and really, really kick into it. So I did it, and I got low, and I started up, and I did fine, but I kind of forgot to bring my skis back to horizontal. So the tips of my skis ended up scraping the ground in front of me. And so I face planted and did several somersaults.
Beautiful.
And I got up and I thought, oh my gosh, I lost my teeth. Like, 'cause I was filling with my tongue and I couldn't feel my teeth. Oh. And like there was some blood. Yeah, sorry. I hope this isn't too graphic for our people. And I had a huge black eye, but all that happened was I just had chipped my teeth, but I didn't lose them. But because my my whole face was covered in snow and I'd done several somersaults. So kind of like you, Richard, it was a humbling experience. I was trying to show off, and I probably bit off a little more than I could chew, and I lost some of my tooth.
Did you come out of your bindings? Were the safety devices
Yeah, so
working?
that was, they call that a yard sale. So I did a yard sale, so I did some forward flips. So one of my skis was still stuck front end in like vertical. I lost another one. I lost both my poles, probably lost a glove or my hat. And
part of your tooth somewhere.
And part of my tooth somewhere. And I tumbled down the rest of the hill. And so, that's probably and pretty humiliating. And I remember the kids didn't feel very sorry for me. They just laughed. They thought it was pretty funny that I had wrecked myself. So, yeah. Eric?
Yeah, that's good. I went snowing, not snowing. It's called skiing, not snowing. Up to Snowy Range yesterday, and I was coming down this jump, and I tried to do a back flip where I'm going to go backwards all the way around and come back. No, I'm just kidding. In Iowa, we didn't have school ski days for some reason in Iowa. This is actually only my second time skiing ever. I'll probably never be great. And so I'm thinking about yesterday with the falls I had yesterday, and the trickiest part for me is getting off the stupid chairlift. All of my falls yesterday were getting off the chairlift. They had to stop the chairlift because on the ground, and they didn't want somebody else to get off and run into me.
Who's the loser who fell off the chair and they're stopping the run?
Yeah, that's frustrating for everyone. Everyone wants to go skiing. They don't want to ride the lift all day.
That's
and then
right.
Someone
You know,
falls
someone
off the
fell
lift.
off again.
Yeah.
A newbie.
That you were being vulnerable, and Richard and I just shot into you.
We're going to talk
Our
about
text
bearing
may-
each other's burdens
Our
today.
text may
and
actually address some of this.
I'm going to have to gently restore you, Richard, after that. We're going to see what Paul has to say about that. Yeah, so I have no pride in skiing whatsoever, but it was still a fun day.
Why don't I read our text?
Yeah. No, we want Richard to.
Oh, yeah, Richard, why don't you read the text? Sorry,
Thank you.
I was trying to keep us on.
Yes, I would love
task.
to. We were talking about how grateful we are to have God's Word to be able to read and give us inspiration for a living. Galatians 6:1, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone, and not in his neighbors. For each will have to bear his own load. Let the one who has taught the word share all good things with the one who teaches.
Yeah, thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
I thought maybe what we would start with today is a question from our listener. Isn't that something cool to say? We have a question from our listener.
Yeah, so we know we have one listener because we have one question.
We have one question. Here's the question. When Paul talks about, he says this, verse 1, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. And this word caught has this idea of surprise in it. And so it's likely that what Paul is referring to is that this is an unintentional sin that a Christian brother or sister is in. And so our responsibility to him or her is to restore them gently. But here's the question from our listener. The question is this. So Paul addresses being gentle with an unintentional sin, but what about intentional sins? Can we then bring out the hammer? Why does Paul make this distinction here between intentional and unintentional? Which is a great question. Because Paul doesn't address that explicitly here. In fact, I meant to address this a little bit on Sunday, but I did not. So here's an example. Paul does bring out the hammer at times, where he takes some pretty drastic action. One example of this is in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and Paul gives some instruction to the church there. There is someone who is actually in intentional willful sin, a heinous sin where he's sleeping with his father's ex-wife. So something that's very willful. And Paul in that situation says, you actually exclude this person from the church. You put them outside the church. That is not a sort of gentle restoration, what we're hearing about in Galatians. That's some drastic action. But it's also a very different situation. And that situation is an intentional, willful, heinous sort of sin. And is not an unintentional one where I may be caught in, might be a blind spot on me, but I don't see where I need somebody to gently restore me. And so, at least there, we do see that Paul has approached these two situations a little bit differently. But I wouldn't say that it's still a bludgeoning of the person in 1 Corinthians 5. The ultimate goal of church discipline is still restoration. To pursue that person, even given the consequences, I'll still pursue that person, see them turn from their sin and come back into fellowship. Where there's not this idea of, if I'm going to get at that person, I'm going to try to hurt them. We would never say that, probably out loud, but there might be pieces of that in our heart. Paul nowhere recommends that sort of approach.
Yeah, that's helpful actually to me. And we didn't really talk about this before. Sometimes we talk about what we're going to talk about when we do these podcasts, but it's interesting, the idea of being caught in a sin. I don't know, it just occurred to me. Oftentimes, I think we can look at other people and think, how can you not see that you're in sin? How can you not see that what you are doing is ungodly? But I think part of being brothers and sisters and being in a body together is believing the best. So probably the first pass at trying to restore someone should always be done gently. Even if the sin seems on a level of 1 to 10, an 8 or a 9, if we think, wow, they've got to stop doing this, probably the best first approach is a gentle correction or a gentle restoration, or even a question of, hey, do you see that this could be a problem? Because I think God may be working on all of us in different ways, and what may seem incredibly intentional to me, someone's behavior, may be unawareness to them, and vice versa. I may be doing things that are really not good, but for some reason, whatever that reason is, I haven't been convicted by the Holy Spirit. So we need one another, but probably, I don't know what you guys think about this, but probably any initial talking to someone about a sin should always be probably approached with gentleness.
Yeah, that's a good point, Josh, because the consequences may still be drastic, but that doesn't mean that we approach that person like a bulldozer. I think I said here that a man was sleeping with his father's ex-wife. I need to be corrected. Is actually his dad's wife. So I don't know if it's a stepmom or a biological mom or not, but it's a willful sin. But even then, Paul is essentially saying there's some drastic consequences you have to take as a result of that sin. But he doesn't say, so you need to approach this guy like a jerk and just shred him.
Yeah, because I even think, if we think on Christian maturity, like for someone who has not known Christ for long, their awareness of sin may not be at the same level as someone who's walked with God for 40 years. Yeah. So I think we've got to be cautious when we do correct, that it would be done with gentleness and love, even if we think this person's off his rocker with this sin because it's completely wrong. They may not realize that.
Yeah, you do it in a way that's still consistent with the fruit of the Spirit, like Paul had just talked about. That's right.
I was going to mention that the point is restoration.
Yeah.
It's not punitive.
Yeah.
It's not getting mad at somebody. We really want to restore them. And so I was trying to think of that verse, a harsh word stirs up anger, but a gentle answer turns away wrath. And so I think if you want restoration, you shouldn't be yelling and screaming and making harsh accusations. It doesn't say this, but I think it behooves us to really think about this before we do it, pray about it, and that probably we will go into some of the other commands that you brought up in this.
Yeah, do you actually mind talking a little bit about that process of preparing to restore somebody gently, especially with Matthew 7, where Jesus says, "Judge not, so you're not judged," and he gives some insight. Yeah, some insight there about what we should do as we examine our own self.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Matthew 7 is, it's very, I think sometimes misapplied, maybe misinterpreted. And it's so, Jesus says, do not judge lest you be judged yourself. And the idea is, well, what he was trying to say is not to judge, but before you judge, he used this illustration. You should take this log out of your eye before you try to take a speck out of another person's life. In other words, you should really self-examine yourself, kind of what are your motives here, kind of diffuse maybe you're angry. So, but he does say to judge, but to judge with, I think, a more of a purer heart. And rather than being angry or vengeful, we want to restore people, which I think is from a Greek word that says setting your bone, isn't it? Mending your net.
Yeah, so these sort of judging among a Christian community, there's some heart work to be done before you approach somebody else. Take the log out of your own eye. We see both in the context of Matthew 7 and also here in Galatians 6, this strong theme of humility. Paul says here, lest you too be tempted, like you're not above this. Yeah. So we approach humbly, gently.
Yeah, there's probably an issue if you're always the corrector, but not the one.
Yeah.
And he says that. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. So if I'm pointing out several people's wrongs, but not willing to have my own wrong examined, I think temptation happens. And then I think verse 2, we're not able to bear one another's burdens. I think what a beautiful thing if I have an opportunity, and if I've taken Matthew 7, if I've prayed about it, and I've approached someone and just said, hey, here's an area of concern. Do you see it too? I want to see you restored. I don't want to see this sin in your life. And if the response is, well, then to walk along that side, that person, and apply verse 2 to help carry that burden. Not to just say, hey, here's where you messed up, work on it, but say, hey, I want you to help me. And I think that's where we're sharing each other's burdens. We're eradicating sin. Sin that we don't know about. I just think there's a beautiful walking in step with another person towards Christ in good and in hard circumstances, but doing it in Christian love.
Have either of you, would either of you mind sharing a concrete way you've seen this happen in your own life? This sort of gentle restoring, bearing each other's burdens. How have you seen it actually play out in an example?
I think I'm married to an amazing woman who loves me enough to correct me, and she is very gentle about it, but very pointed, and also very specific about what is it I did or said or that will cross the barrier over to a sinful action / attitude on it. And so that's good there. And it helps you, I think when it's done properly, helps you respond in repentance a bit easier, because if the corrector is very harsh, you tend to get bowed up and hardened, don't you think?
Defensive.
Yeah, and that's not a good way to teach and to correct. Josh, do you have something?
I think I think a way that I've experienced gentle restoration is, it's funny, I kind of have this duality in myself, and I'm certain some of it's sin and some of it might be trying to walk in the Spirit, but I think I wear my emotions on my sleeve, but I'm also emotionally aloof at times. So I've had, maybe even some of our listeners, but I've had several people, especially people who know me well, people in our church, family members that ask, how are you doing? And I will give, oh, I'm fine. But they know from my countenance that I'm not. And so, and part of it is I'm not being honest. Or I'm just like, hey, I just got to get through this, and I don't want to address it, but if someone really cares and asks how I'm doing, and I give just I'm fine. answer. So I think I've been and even to the point where done with gentleness, but having people say, well, that's not true. I can tell you're not fine. How are you really doing? And so that's maybe a simple example, but I think how could anyone carry, you said this in your sermon, Eric, how can anyone carry my burden if I'm always just fine? I think, I'm trying to think, I think in a prayer meeting, Carrie Nevins prayed this, who's on staff at the church, and she said, boy, I wish more people would come up front for prayer so that we as a church could carry each other's burdens more. But that's putting yourself out there. And so, and I'd be the first one to be like, oh, I don't really know if I want to go up front and be prayed for. So I'd say the body asking, for me to be real in the body, I've been corrected in that I've been maybe having an appearance of having it just being okay, or I have it all together today, when really I don't. And yeah, so that'd probably be an example. Do you have an example that you can think of?
Man, it's hard to think of one where I have sinned and I need correction. I'm just kidding. I should probably confess that. It's interesting because as you two were talking, I was thinking about what is so difficult for me when I am corrected. So my wife is a good example. She'll call me on if I'm being conceited or prideful, proud, I guess. And that's exactly what Paul says at the end of chapter 5. That is a killer of this kind of spirit-produced love that we read here, and how it works out is pride. And so when I have been corrected, I'm thinking of examples over the years. When I have been corrected, it can be really hard for me because it's actually really embarrassing. It's embarrassing because I think partly because it's pointing out that I'm not perfect, and how I operate either at work or at home, that there's room for growth for. So it hits on this pride piece in me, and then bearing each other's burdens is the same thing. I would much rather not share, or actually, I would much rather convince myself in ignorance I don't have any burdens that people need to share, than actually looking at reality and saying, no, I need some help here or there. Because when I do that, it's not embarrassing, but there's still this ping upon my pride that, I can't do it all myself, even though I like to think that I can.
And isn't that interesting? Because, the text again addresses this in verse 3. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. I think our skiing example, there you get a point there, Eric, because you were not trying to think you were something. You were just trying to get off the lift.
Yeah.
Where Richard and I, both of our stories, we thought we were really
hot
something.
shots. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were humbled. But I think that's true even in your example you just gave. Like, I don't need to share my burdens. I'm okay. My example was the same. Like, I don't really need to share how I'm doing. If you respond poorly, Richard, to Karen's correction, then it's like, well, I'm going to shun your gentle correction. And I think, wow, verse 3 addresses that pretty clearly, that we are being deceived. We're deceived.
Yeah, so I get slapped upside my face with what Paul says there, because you're exactly right. He's saying my pride is deceiving me. And so I don't actually know how to live in Christian community because my pride, in a sense, is stunting me there. Where if spirit-produced love is supposed to be this gentle restoration, this bearing the burdens, but my pride is like cutting that off at the legs, then I am losing out on what Christian community, a spirit-produced Christian community is supposed to be like.
I think one thing you talked a little bit about this, and I think it was really good, and I thought about, and it convicted me, how can I really be connected to this body if I am just deceived and don't think I need to share anything of myself?
Yeah.
So I think one of the beautiful things I've seen in the last 3-4 years, we've talked a lot about the difficulties, but these difficulties have actually caused burdens that I believe our church is sharing. Hey, this is difficult. This is hard. Hopefully in our townships and in our women's groups and men's groups and any kind of affinity group, the trail, I hope that it would be a place that's like, yes, we would all agree life has been tricky or confusing, but that we could say, wow, God could actually work in allowing us to be closer because we're carrying each other's burdens. Instead of just saying, oh, nope, I'm fine, work's fine, family life's fine, fine.
might this be one of the ways that God has been graciously growing our church through some of the really hard things we've been? I think you're hitting on something. Our church has grown in some of these ways I don't think has existed in the last, 11, 12 years, as long as the town church has been around. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, as I was listening to you guys wax eloquently, the whole idea of deception is such a big thing because Satan is the father of lies, and there is a spiritual war going on, and we listen to lies, and we unknowingly listen to lies. If we don't have people in our lives that know us enough, and that means we have to let them in, we will be deceived. And so we need each other. And in that correction there, you're listening to a lie. You need to listen to the truth. That's a dear friend that will help you do that.
I would say one area for me personally where this has really been convicting, and it starts at my most intimate relationship, starting with Liz, my wife, but it carries on to friendships and even acquaintances I don't know well. Is one of the deceptive things I have is when someone is gently correcting me, my mind initially goes to they're against me.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how often. I mean, this crushes my wife, if I'm perfectly honest. Like, it's a great sin that I commit against her, and that I'm like, well, you wouldn't believe me anyway, or you don't really care about me, or you don't know what my desires are. And what a hurtful thing when someone is really taking a step of faith to gently correct, and the one being corrected is being deceived and sees that person is actually out to hurt them instead of actually to restore them. I think I feel like how my feelings are instead of what their intention is. And so there's a big growth step for me in that. That's a big conviction for me.
That's insightful, having that idea that this person is now against me. There's a fight beginning, and I have an enemy almost.
Yeah, and I mean, Liz would say that sometimes I think you see me as your enemy.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Rather than being on your team.
yeah. And so,
Wow.
yeah,
That's good. Very insightful, Josh.
Yeah, well, it's not good.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that changed.
I'm
God's
so
working.
glad you shared that.
Yeah.
Eric has been wanting me to confess sins on the podcast, so
I have.
there's a sin.
Thank you. Thank you. That is actually really, really insightful. And it's Josh's birthday today, so I thought we would give a quick little song for him. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Josh. Happy birthday to you.
Wow.
And many more.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
We're glad you were born.
I sinned, though, too.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
okay.
do. Yeah.
Even on your birthday.
Should I talk
Oh,
about
you
that
do.
some more?
Hey, I have another question I want to go. And Richard, I want to ask you this. Where is the line between keeping a record of all the unintentional sins that everybody around us has and pursuing all of them with everybody? That's on one side. And the other side, letting some things go. Like having the wisdom that it's just not that important, or I don't know. Like we'll see how that develops in the future. It may not need to be said anything. Maybe I just need to not say anything for whatever reason. Do you know that tension I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is a tension. We constantly get sinned against, maybe in minor ways. But then the question is, how do you know when you should confront somebody on that?
Yeah.
Which is really a good question. And I think one is not to, first of all, just react and jump into it on the spot. I think you should stop and think about it and pray about it. And pray, what are my motives? Was that really, did I really hear it that way? Was that really a sin against me, or is it just, an area of my life that I'm sensitive to? So I think just taking some time, trying to figure out and understand it. And also I think if that person who has sinned, if that's maybe it's a trend in their life, it's a habit that is a bad habit, that is a sinful habit, and I think that would be a clue to maybe do it. And also the severity of it. Some sin causes more damage than others, I think. And so if it's a very damaging thing to that person or someone else, I think you really need to do it.
So there's a role of wisdom here.
There is, and wisdom through prayer, and wisdom by making bad mistakes and when you did it wrong before,
Do you have thoughts on that in addition?
I'm not really. I think maybe my only other thought is when I wrestle with this, if I'm actually able to think about it well, is to think if it's actually something in myself that's off, I received it wrong, or I don't know, just in a bad mood or something like that, and it's something that I need to work on myself rather than put on somebody else.
Isn't it true that sometimes we see in others what we see in ourselves, and so we see something in ourselves that we don't like, and then we see it in another person, and then it just creates a bad attitude right from the get-go.
Sometimes I think those are some of the biggest family problems.
Yeah.
Because we've all come in a family,
Yeah.
in a household. We have all the same, many of the shared experiences and many shared behaviors. And I think a lot of those frustrations can come from the family unit.
Yes.
Can I ask another question? And this is it's kind of similar to the last one, that there's a line here, like where's the line and where isn't it? Verse 2 talked about bearing one another's burdens, and verse 5 says, but we will have to bear our own load. We talked about this a little bit before the podcast. Can you give some additional insight into that, Eric? Or Richard, what insights maybe do you have on how do I know when to go to someone and ask for assistance or to offer assistance, and when do we think, okay, there's some personal responsibility and maybe to not interfere? How do we know on both sides, the one who's experiencing the load and experiencing a need for help and the one that's offering?
Yeah, on the face of it, it sure seems like Paul's saying two very different things here. Bear each other's load, burden, he says, and then you need to bear your own load. Yeah, the context of the two are a little bit different, though. So I think Paul's actually talking about two different things. The first time, he is talking about what we generally think about bearing each other's burdens, challenges, difficulties. He could be primarily talking about when you gently restore somebody in a process of restoration. If there's a process there, that could be an example of it. The second time here in verse 5 where he says, for each will have to bear their own load, he seems to be referring to our personal accountability before God on what we do, because he says in verse 4 to test our own work. And so in that sense, this load is not the struggles or challenges that another brother or sister has in Christ, but rather it's your own responsibility in what you do before God.
Richard, any other thoughts? That's good. That's helpful.
No, it is helpful. I wonder too, if we're correcting someone, if another thing that we could help them with is how could I help you? Let's suppose I am really sarcastic with my wife. It's been a habit, and my wife doesn't like sarcasm from me, by the way. And so, and so she'll correct me on that. And then so I may have maybe one of you guys say, if you hear me talking like this, and I can also encourage my wife to go ahead and thank you for correcting me. And then if you see that again, do it. Help me not to do it by pointing it out if necessary. And maybe even just pointing out to people where they're doing a good job on it.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah, I think having a desire, like you just mentioned, a desire to be corrected, I think that is certainly evidence of the Spirit in your life. That is not easy. That's a mark of the Spirit having been there, I think, for a while and changing some of those desires. That's not natural.
It's a key sign of humility.
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions from this text before I ask our last question? Anything from maybe verse 6 or 4 or 5?
How was that to preach?
The sharing all good things with the teachers.
Hey, thanks for the shout out on that one. I'll take that shout out.
Hey, I thought you did a really good job, and you were very honest. My wife thought you were very honest, and that was really good.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
So that was
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a tension there being a teacher saying that. Yeah, that's right.
Rubbing your fingers together.
Yeah, I think the one thing I did not communicate well, though, is that it's not just me, Josh, and Vince that are supported by the giving of the church to see the gospel transform lives. We have part-time staff that are working in these sorts of ways as well. So
and global workers.
Global workers, yeah. And so I didn't do a good job of taking the focus off of just the full-time pastors, but it definitely goes broader.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. You guys ready for the last question? Or anything else before that?
I think we're ready.
Launch it, bro.
Okay, it's going to be a surprise question today.
Launch it.
What out of Richard is acting out, pulling a bowstring and shooting off an arrow, I think right up to the heart of heaven here.
Hey, there's one last thing before you launch this last one, and one last disclaimer. It's Katie bar the door.
Seriously.
Yes.
Are you correcting Richard gently right now?
Yes, so I had a comment. Actually, the person who gave us the question for the day also said, you guys, I think you might have judged us. So to you, listener, I don't know if you judged us, but take that before God. But the phrase is not Katie by the door. He said that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Katie bar the door. Katie bar the door because it's all going to get crazy.
It's
up
like
in
lock
here.
it.
You mean
Yep,
like
make sure.
lock it?
Yeah, lock. Katie bar the door.
Okay.
So, Richard,
I was all jimmied up.
You were jimmied up, and I just thought you knew what you were talking about, and then I was confused.
I can do that to people.
So, listener that brought this up, thank you for the correction. Maybe address Richard privately and correct him gently.
Yeah, and keep on bringing more corrections for Richard. All our listeners. Let's get some more corrections here for Richard, actually.
How about, should we go to the last question?
Yes. What in this text do you see that raises your affections for our good God?
Yeah, I think just the importance of community. We say it every week. Vince has been saying it for years, and I actually think we've said this in this podcast several times. I think it's happening at the town church. And then as I look at even how this text, this little section concludes, which we'll look at this week, verses 7 through 10, I just think, and I thought this whenever I was making the announcements this week, is what a joy to be in a church that is sharing one another's burdens. What a joy it is to carry the burdens of those who are suffering and are going through hard things. So how it's increased our intimacy as a church, how it's increased our knowability, how it's just caused us to have great fondness for one another. So I think even though it's hard to bear one another's burden or bear one another's burdens or share burdens, it's critically important for our body. And I think so my affections are stirred because we're doing it. Perfectly, no. Definitely not, and probably not, but it feels like there's something great happening at the town church in that people are being honest, at least with some other people, and that true Christian community is growing because there's a reliance and a need for God. So I'd say that this passage, as you shared the 4 different points, I thought, wow, not perfectly, but good job, Town Church. I'm greatly encouraged.
Thank you, Josh.
Sure.
I'm thinking, just the big idea is just our desperate need for correction, because we are needy. We're sinners. We're blind to things, and I'm just thinking. The worthiness of Jesus is such that I want to live a life as obedient and pleasing to my Lord as possible, and I can't do that without correction. And He's worthy of me doing a better job, and without correction, I can't do a better job. And it's not pleasing God for merit. I do it because I have this motive. I love him, and I want to be like him. I want to act like him. This doesn't get me into heaven. And I think it kind of goes back to one of the themes of Galatians is our motives. He loves to work in our motives and tweak those such that we want to be pleasing to him. We want to come to church. I want to love people. I want to grow in my affections for Jesus.
That's really good, Richard. In fact, that's something I meant to share on Sunday that I didn't as well. That Christian obedience, as you mature, as the Spirit continues to work, it propels you forward to want to obey, doesn't it? And rather than, I'm afraid of a stick of some sort, or I just know it's a rule I'm supposed to keep, it actually goes the other way because God's so worthy, as you just mentioned.
Yeah,
you know him more, you see more of his multiple perfections and his goodness and his glory and all of that. Yeah. That's really helpful. Yeah.
How about for you, Eric?
Yeah, for me out of this text, I think there's two things. One is our complete dependence upon God to do any of this. We saw that last week. It flows into chapter 6 here. Yeah. None of us can just do these things on our own. The Spirit is the one producing the love that then evidences itself like this in Christian community. So God is doing it. And then in our dependence upon him. But the second one is that it just shows how good he is. This is the kind of community that the Spirit is creating.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a community where we're just backbiting, is that the phrase, and being competitive and trying to one-up each other, but rather it's this sort of community that God not only desires, but he's actually producing in us.
So the Spirit's working in our church.
Yes. So as you just mentioned, we're seeing those things as evidence of spirits at work among us. It's beautiful. And yet, at the same time, Paul still commands us to the church. These are still commands upon us as individuals. So we have a role here, don't we? But we cannot do that without God's grace and the Spirit at work. So it just shows how good our God is. Yeah. Like, I want to be a part of this sort of community. So as God continues to do this among the town church, this community is just going to get better and better and better. And hopefully we
not for our glory.
No. Hopefully we see the privilege that we have to be a part of this church as a result. All as a result of what God's doing among us.
That's good.
It's a good God.
He is.
Any other concluding things? Is this where we end the podcast?
Yeah, this is
fitting.
I bet we're at 43 minutes. So
I think we are right in there. Thank you for listening again. If you are a part of our church and you hear a sermon and you're wondering, there's some questions, there's maybe some things that it didn't touch on, feel free to email us, and we'd be happy to hopefully talk about it here a little bit. You can email us at info@thetownchurch.org. I'll be happy to hear from you. Even if you have some feedback, like this is actually helpful, or here's some things that would be helpful you're not doing, that's helpful too. So we want to use our time well. So thanks for listening. We love you all and hope you have a great week.